A 21st century scholar needs a 21st century education. And it was this kind of education that came under the spotlight during Future Nation Schools conference on the 23rd of September 2016. The event brought educational experts, thought leaders, and young entrepreneurs together to discuss 21st century learning and teaching and introduce potential parents, stakeholders, and the media to the Future Nation Schools educational model.
To host a conference like this with opinion makers, with people who are educationists, who are thinkers in education is absolutely amazing for a very young chain of schools like Future Nation Schools.
I'm glad that it started. I think it's gonna shake the system.
It's marvelous that it's happening in South Africa.
Giving young people an opportunity to believe in themselves and be part of the learning process in the way that suits their culture and their being was exciting for us.
The school's founder, Sizwe Xasana, set the scene by explaining why there is a need for a new approach to education. An approach that is futuristic and creates a platform to solve the problems of the future.
What the world needs are students and learners who can think, who can analyze information, who can acquire information themselves, who can produce information, who can actually become entrepreneurs, who can start businesses, they can play a role in society broadly. So that is why we thought it was important in the context of the African continent to make sure that we can be part of a movement to help leapfrog our education system to the 21st century. What we need to change is our approaches, our attitudes, and how we teach and learn. So that's why we, as a Future Nation Schools, felt as part of the solution, we're going to start this chain of schools.
To educate a new generation, you need to understand that generation, be it Generation X, Y, or Z. Trends study expert St. Francis Totlang shared some insight into what influences the thinking and attitudes of the up-and-coming generations. How do we facilitate new trends into current methods to disrupt education for a brighter future?
We look at some of the trends like helpful homes, smart cities, smart citizens. What does that mean, and how does that influence my thinking, my attitudes? Technology has influenced the way we view the world. Technology has influenced the way in which we interact with our world, because perhaps we lose touch of who we're really speaking to. How are we appealing to their mindsets? How are we appealing to their attitudes and beliefs?
A new model for education needs an innovative way of thinking that embraces innovation and technology. This was the key message from Professor Mamoketsi Pakeng.
I want to propose 4 pillars that can serve as a framework. The first pillar, in my view, is innovation. Everything demands innovation and out-of-the-box thinking. The second pillar is technology. Technology is not a solution in and of itself to 21st century education. It is simply a tool. The third pillar is entrepreneurship. We now need a new education paradigm, an entrepreneur-oriented education, instead of an employee-oriented education.
Effective training of teachers is a crucial key to the success of a good education model. And teacher training came under the spotlight with a presentation by Professor Nadine Peterson.
What should teacher education focus on? Firstly, I think it should be about assisting teachers to see and interpret the elements of their practice, really critically. More importantly, to understand how children learn.
From Umtata in the Eastern Cape to Harvard University and developing rocket fuel for NASA, Siyabulela Tusa shared his own inspiring success story. A story that shows that much change is needed in the education system to inspire future leaders.
You see, part of the reason why I believe that Africa has been held back in terms of its development, in terms of taking its place as a bright and shining continent, an industrialized continent, is because we've not paid particular attention towards developing and nurturing our greatest resource, which is the African child, the mind of the African child. Educating that, teaching that child to innovate. Because it is until we do that that we'll be able to seize all these immense potentials that we see in the Africa we have before us.
During a break in the proceedings, it was time for guests to experience firsthand the potential of virtual reality technology with a simple Google Cardboard device and a smartphone app. Then getting back to business, the discussion focused on effective mathematics education with Professor Jill Adler.
Mathematics has in fact becoming more used across more and more disciplines. We have mathematical biology, we have mathematics of finance. We all know that we have mathematics for engineering, and that's the one that's usually put up as mathematics and physics.
In developing their model for a 21st century education, the leadership of Future Nation Schools have partnered with High Tech High School in San Diego, California. One of the leaders of this innovative school, Laura McBain, shared their success story.
And so when we started our school, we started with some basic ideas that we wanted to disrupt. The first idea is you separate kids by perceived ability, based on a test score, based on how they look, what zip code they come in, because it's perceived that they're not capable of doing something amazing. The second is you separate the hands from the minds. That's a belief system. We don't know what they're going to become. This other idea is we separate schools from the world. We don't have fences around our school. Our kids go out into internships. Our adults come in, our kids go out, because we don't want the school segregated from the learning experience that they're having. That's important. And then this last one for us is separating professional learning from schools.
Continuing with the theme of innovation, Godwin Koza spoke about the quality of education in the 21st century.
The question is, so how do you play in that space, in the innovation space, particularly for a big system such as education, which has used traditional methodologies and works in a very traditional way? This business of innovation, it's actually about using the known knowns, the stuff that we know, to address the known knowns, the problems that we know. These are the problems that we know in the education system, as well as to address the known unknowns. So we don't exactly know what the society will require from our kids in the future, as well as the known unknowns.
Future Nation Schools believes that effective teaching during the early years of a child's life is crucial for later learning. And this approach was emphasized by the school's head of Future Nation Launchpad, Liesl Algio.
We know in 20 years' time, 50% of the jobs are unknowns. So how do we train children in a way that they're going to cope with stuff that we don't even know what it looks like? I believe early childhood development is a very important piece of this puzzle. We need to focus on this area of explosive growth. The brain is the only organ that is underdeveloped when a child is born. And so literally between the age of 0 and 5, 90% of your child's brain growth happens. How are we making sure we utilize that as much as possible?
Wrapping up the discussions for the day, the head of Future Nation Schools, Mampho Langa, gave an overview of the school's project-based learning philosophy.
Project learning, they acquire knowledge by designing, investigating, exploring information over an extended period. As they move on through trial and error, that's where they'll acquire information or knowledge. We challenge them with problems. We want them to challenge the status quo. We want them to engage with the outside world and deal with realistic issues. And we value their voices. And failure is appreciated, because that's the beginning of learning.
Well done for wanting to transform education in this country. We are so proud of you, and we are behind you. We support you all the way.
I hope my grandchildren come here one day.
And they should go for it. There's going to be challenges, but I think the dream is in good hands.
They are moving us from an environment that is secular, that is so used to being ordinary, into a place that we've never been to before.
This is going to build and then actually spread to other schools. The whole country is ready for something revolutionary in education, something that can shake up our system, something that can produce the kind of learners that we need to have.
When we look in 20 years, hopefully this business will be a global business, actually, and will be playing a role in producing amazing children and amazing skills.